Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where their Pink Ribbon Bagel campaign just started to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You can support local breast cancer charities just by purchasing a Pink Ribbon Bagel throughout October. So go to your local Panera Bread and support this amazing campaign with the Pink Ribbon Bagel all throughout October. Panera is my favorite place to stop by for a cup of coffee, hang out with friends, and it's a great place for book clubs to meet. It's all at Panera Bread. And now, enjoy the show. This is a Reading with Robin official gush alert because this is a debut that I've been talking about on the Reading with Robin page since I picked this book up over the summer. Sarah Domet's debut novel, The Guineveres, is out today from Flatiron Books. Sarah is also the author of 90 Days to Your Novel. I've got to find out, was this a 90-day novel? Well, I'm thinking not. She holds a Ph.D. in literature and creative writing from the University of Cincinnati, where she once served as the associate editor of the Cincinnati Review. Her short work has appeared in numerous journals, including Borough Press Review, Beloit Fiction Journal, Potomac Review, New Delta Review, so many places. She's originally from Ohio, still a Midwesterner. We've been chatting about the Midwest, and she now lives in Savannah, Georgia. She's here on Reading with Robin. Congratulations on this. Love this book. Unbelievable. The Guineveres. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk about the Guineveres now that it's out into the world. It's very exciting.
My pleasure. I mean, that's the thing, like we were talking, and again, Reading with Robin listeners know, I have a little chit-chat with my author before and trying not to use all of the effusive, colorful language that I'm thinking about this book so that I can share it. Everybody's listening. They're tuned into Reading with Robin, and they want to know what we're saying, and I just get so excited about a book that I want to share with the audience. Amy Einhorn, Flatiron release, which means you must pick this book up. It's in People magazine right next to the Bruce Springsteen book. And Sarah, that's crazy. That is just, you're right next to Bruce. Actually, they should send a copy of this. I think that, right?
I think we're practically friends now. I mean, isn't that how it works?
It is a forever connection, yes.
As I was telling you, right before we started taping, I'm from Cincinnati in the Midwest, and they all were like, oh, you wrote a book. That's nice. But you're in People magazine next to Bruce Springsteen, the boss. So I feel like I picked up some extra cool points when that happened.
You picked, immeasurable coolness on this one, but I think that he should absolutely, there is a connection when you're in that People connection of people and books. There always winds up being more in my experience. So, I'm sure in between tours he has some time to read, and the Guineveres and actually, I'm looking at the gorgeous braiding on the front. Reminds his daughter is a rider, so it's a ponytail. It's a French braid. So there's a whole connection. I'm feeling the connection to the Springsteen.
Wow.
Right? I mean,
I'm a little bit more optimistic now, As I said to a friend, if this doesn't make me cool, I'm just never going to be cool.
I'm so lucky. When I saw that, I said, I am really glad Sarah and I have this interview locked in, because now that she's in People magazine and sitting there pretty next to Bruce, I mean, it's all about how
it was amazing.
Affects the show. Amazing. Well, just enjoy it and soak it up. The book is out today. It's The Guineveres, out by Flatiron Press. You can visit Sarah's site at sarahdomet.com. You can find her on Twitter, sort of on Instagram, right, and on Facebook.
Sort of, yeah. I need to be better about Instagram, but yes.
Well, there's a lot to do, and as we were talking, you have a 1-year-old, almost 1-year-old, well, a 1-year-old, yes, and a dog and a husband, and you've got work to do, but I know the Instagram, and this book photographs so beautifully. Maybe like in a hair salon where someone's getting their hair French braided and they're holding the book. And
I like that idea.
Well,
my brother's big Instagrammer. He has over 1 million followers. And
Sarah,
send me pictures of your book, and I keep saying I'll get to it. But you're right. I have all these things I keep meaning to do, and my list keeps piling up. So I promise, starting today, Instagram is.
Wait, you buried the lead on. You buried the lead on that one. Your brother has 1 million followers.
Yeah, a million plus. At Purpose of Envy is his handle. And,
all right, I have to look at that one. Wait, what is it? At Purpose?
At Purpose of Envy.
Of envy? Well, I am already envious. Okay. I will have to look at that one. This book does photograph gorgeously. Yeah, you might want to take his 1 million plus Instagram followers and have Bruce might be calling him. This is hilarious. You have so much going for you. Even without all of this, and I said to you before, if this book were presented to me in a piece of tinfoil, because it is an Amy Einhorn Flatiron book, I would have read it and loved it just the same. But it is gorgeous packaging.
Thank you so much. As you know, the cover changed from the original cover that they had out, and then they presented me this new cover and said it's changing. After I had already become really attached to the old one, but I have to say, this new cover, I can't imagine it ever being any other cover. This is the cover that is meant for this book.
Right? It's like when you had your daughter. Could you imagine a different daughter, right? Well, for that one, for that special delivery. Right?
I know you got attached to this one, but here's a different one.
We're keeping this one. And you were saying the list of things keeps growing that you have for this book. And there is an awful lot that surrounds the publication of a book. And the details can be endless. I'd get to the one about your brother on Instagram.
Crash course, for sure.
Right? Exactly. So how do you keep your notes? What's your system for keeping organized?
I'm kind of old-fashioned. I do keep a calendar, my Google Calendar, which I think is really useful. But I'm pretty old school with I use a 3x5 note card and a pen, and I keep it on my desk.
I love my pens and my note cards. I just tend to write the same thing on different notes in different parts of the house. I compile them, and I love to cross them out.
If it makes its way to my desk, eventually it will get done. And sometimes I'll put things on there that I've done just so that I can have the joy of crossing it off and feeling that I have, one step closer to getting my to-do list done.
I always do that. I love the write on the cross off. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite tricks because the notes sort of are everywhere. There's also a blurb on this book from one of my very favorite writers ever. It's Adriana Trigiani, and she says, the Guineveres, right, Adriana? The Guineveres She's Southern love. The Guineveres is a glorious debut. Sarah Domet is an enthralling storyteller who has an original voice and an ability to create unforgettable characters with a deep and abiding understanding of the human heart. Love, betrayal, forgiveness. It's all here. Readers will savor and rejoice. So true.
What an amazing blurb from an amazing writer. When I read that, I was just over the moon with gratitude. When you're writing something, you spend so much time, especially a novel-length work, getting to know these characters yourself and getting to really kind of love your characters, and you send it out into the world, and you don't know how people will react to them. So, to hear that somebody else has connected with your story there's no greater reward for a writer than that.
So well deserved. I connected so dearly with these Guineveres. It's such a clever concept too. So take the Reading with Robin listeners, and I'm on the phone with debut novelist Sarah Domet. Her book, The Guineveres, this gorgeous novel, is out just today. You can visit her at sarahdomet.com, Twitter, Instagram, all the usual places, and see where she will be, her events that are coming up in Ohio, in Georgia. And also I'm sure you must Skype with book clubs. Is that something, you must be now. Is that something you like to do? Because it's such a great book club pick. Yeah,
absolutely. I love talking to people because it's so newly in the world. I haven't had a chance to talk to a whole lot of people about the novel, but I love talking to people about the novel when I have the chance to do that. It's so much fun, and I love to hear what readers have taken away from it because
I love to encourage.
Oftentimes different than what I had thought about it, but I think, you're right. That is a good point.
Well, I think that's one of the coolest things, and I always enjoy hearing a reader and a writer sort of talking about that exact thing where it was maybe a throwaway part of a story. Nothing's ever a throwaway. Of course, it's tightly written and there's no, but just not a main focus. But somebody's really connected or it's a trigger in some way, and that sort of takes the whole story or the journey of the characters in another direction for the reader. And so it's such a personal connection between the writer and the reader, and with all of the ways people can get at you on social media. I can't wait to hear what you'll be hearing, and that's exciting for me too when I love to share a book. And then, people to say, oh, you gave me that one. That is awesome. And people like to go to Reading with Robin, and I'll mention the site. It's readingwithrobin.com, and you can find the podcast available on iTunes, and I'm also on Twitter at Robin Call. So the Guineveres, with the coolest names ever, how did this idea sort of form, and what would you like the readers to know about these amazing four friends?
Oh, gosh. I have to, this is a novel that's set in the convent. It's about four girls who all are named Guinevere, who've been abandoned by their parents as the Sisters of the Supreme Adoration Convent. And like any teens, and it's set during a time of war. And like any teens, they're less interested in the war that's going on outside of the convent and more interested in kind of their personal lives and the dramas of their everyday lives. I have to admit that a lot of, I think, the impetus from this novel came because I grew up in a Catholic household, and I attended Catholic schools from 1st to the 12th grade. And as I like to say, you don't need inspiration when you have memories from a Catholic schooling, because there's just so much weirdness that happens that is totally normalized. So many experiences that were just, our day-to-day, everyday common experiences that when you start writing about it or talking to somebody who didn't have that kind of background growing up, they're like, whoa, wait. They would send you to these spiritual retreats and take your watches away so you could be on God's time?
Reading that in the book, I was wondering if that was true, because this really couldn't be any further from anything that I'm connected to. So they would do that. And then, and kids will be kids. Yeah. So they, you must have always been trying to figure out a way to tell what time it was. But where were you going?
There were no cell phones, so,
sure.
Back then. Well, they had been invented for sure, but nobody had cell phones.
Right.
And they would do things like make us chant "God doesn't make junk" as these confidence building exercises. And so my sister was one of the first altar girls in our diocese, maybe even our region, and this was like a really big deal at the time. I remember it had kind of this renegade feeling about it. So, some of the ideas and the kernels of inspiration came from my own experiences growing up, though obviously it's not about me.
Sure.
I was also one of many, many Sarahs in my class. They called us Sarah 1, Sarah 2, Sarah 3, Sarah 4. So I think all of these details kind of got into my head. But I think the real kind of aha moment for me was years later, when I was in graduate school and, cynical as most grad students tend to be. A friend of mine gave me for my birthday, I think, a copy of Lives of the Saints. And Lives of the Saints, for those who don't know what it is just basically a book of compiled biographies of the saints. And so I started reading it. I started reading a lot of the stories of the women saints versus the male saints, and a lot of the men, they became saints because they were doing these really public and valiant deeds. They were founding abbeys, and they were going out into the world, and they were fighting battles, whereas a lot of the female saints were left to just suffer in their bodies. And so for a lot of the the female saints, they were burning their faces with lye to kind of make themselves suffer more, because the more they suffered, kind of the closer they felt to God. And so they were lying on beds of glass, or they were starving themselves, or they were
so nothing much has changed then.
Cutting off their breasts.
Wow.
So I got to thinking,
saints.
Yeah. I know. It's wild. So I got to thinking, these were the stories that I grew up on, and how might this affect young girls who don't really know anything other than kind of what has been normalized into their everyday lives. And so I started writing the story of the Guineveres, kind of what it's like to grow up in the shadow of an institution, and how do you find yourself and navigate your way and carve out your sense of identity.
So smart.
And so
I love that.
it became the Guineveres.
That is so cool. I love the way you took that you were one of many Sarahs. Now the Guineveres all spell that they all have different. They have nicknames, so there's all variations of the Guineveres, which is I thought was just really cool. And I'm speaking with debut novelist Sarah Domet. You can visit her website at sarahdomet.com. The Guineveres is just out by Flatiron Books. Do not miss this book. Reading with Robin alert. Get the Guineveres. That's all you really need to know. The rest of this is just chit-chat. You don't want to miss this. Now, were the Sarahs spelled all different ways as well when you were in school?
Yeah, I mean, there was with the H and without the H, but we all pretty much were Sarah, and so that's why they had to label us number one, number two. I had a friend, mother, who would call us Sarah, or Sarah, or Sarah, Sarah. You know, she would. That's how we responded.
That is hilarious.
Because, so when I was writing the novel, I realized I'd kind of created a complication for myself, having all these characters have the same name. So I had to kind of carve out nicknames for them.
You had the nicknames were so clever because I was imagining you had Sarah, Sari, Sari. But I know they're, with the Sarahs, but it's amazing what you'll respond to. And I know that there are names that just are popular at certain times. And as a mother, you think you're so clever. So your daughter has, if there were 1, 2, and 3 of your daughter, I would just hang up the name game because, right? And you've got a clever name.
I think that's why we wanted to name her something unique is because my husband and I both have these extremely common names and have always been one of many people named our names, and so we wanted to kind of give her the gift of uniqueness, which kind of creates its own problem because whenever you say her name, people say, "What is that?"
Well, you told me, and I just thought that's just so beautiful. I met a woman last week at an event, and her daughter's name is Nolia, and I said, "Oh, is it like Magnolia?" And she said, "Yeah, she was named for Magnolia, and they call her Nolia." I just thought that was so pretty, and
that
she was
is
saying,
a beautiful name.
Right? You're in the South there, and Magnolia, and I gravitate toward that. I have children with names that were, traditional and easy, I guess, and tough to mangle. But you never know. People do all sorts of things with names, and names are so important. So in naming your characters, you have the 4 Guineveres, which is, I just was so attracted to that. Now, and they're teenage girls. And so talk about the love story element of this book and set during the war, and how did you weave that sort of together?
So it's set during a war. And a group of comatose soldiers arrive at this convent to recover. I'm doing air quotes right now because they're all comatose, and the idea is that likely they will not recover. And there are 5 of them at first, and one does wake up from the coma and goes home, and one of the young girls who is almost 18 at the convent escorts him home to act as his home nurse. And so these girls, the Guineveres, then get this idea that their only way to get out of the convent, which they so desperately want to leave, is to pin their hopes on these boys, that these boys will wake up and that they will get to go home with them. But, something interesting happens, as does with a lot of teenage girls. Hormones take over. And as they're coming to their sense of self and kind of their bodies are changing, they kind of delude themselves into believing that they're in love with these boys. And so they fall in love with the comatose soldiers that they are looking after. Sounds a lot stranger when I verbalize it, doesn't it?
No, but it's a love story, and that's the thing about storylines that can transcend the situation, because you've got these young women in a convent, and of course they desperately want to get out, and they're very clever in the beginning. It happens in the beginning of the book. They try and make a break for it, and I don't remember if it's mentioned in the book or it was just in my own head that I was imagining the scene in Animal House. Was that mentioned in the book, or was that in my head? That was in my head. No, that wasn't in your book. That was in my head. The scene in Animal House, the parade in the car, the idea of hiding in a parade in a float. Now, that was all in my head.
Watch that.
Oh, yes. Have you seen Animal House, I'm sure?
I have, but it's been a while, I will admit.
Well, if it's been a while, it's time to see Animal House again. It's at the end, and that's so funny. So as I was reading it, because the girls devise a way to get out, and it has to do with the float in the parade. And so in my head, I was thinking Animal House. Okay, so it has nothing to do with the Guineveres. But now you can put on your little list on your index card, place
I
it
know,
on
I'm
your
writing
desk,
it down now. Animal
and
House.
That's
Rewatch.
one of those. It never gets old. And
Parade
if anybody,
scene.
yes, if anybody's listening to this interview from Flatiron, they're thinking, wait, where is she directing this? Towards Animal House. The Guineveres is just out, is a debut novel. It is the thing I enjoy most about Reading with Robin, is sharing a debut novel with my listeners, with my readers. It is huge joy. It is. If somebody said to me, Robin, what's the thing you love most about Reading with Robin? Awesome debut novel. That's the answer. And it's out by Sarah Domet. You can read about it in People magazine when you're going through and you're seeing Bruce Springsteen. Take a left with your eyeballs, and you'll see this gorgeous cover. It's the Guineveres. What did you read over the summer in anticipation of maybe not having so much time to read, or any of the galleys that maybe you got through any of the publishers, or a book that you'd like to share with the Reading with Robin listeners?
Yeah, I read a couple of books I read kind of along two lines this summer. One was kind of going back to reread some things that had influenced the work that I did on the Guineveres in anticipation of kind of talking a little bit more about maybe what inspired my work. And so I went back and I reread Jeffrey Eugenides' The Virgin Suicide.
Love that book.
And I reread The Boys of My Youth by Joanne Beard. Have you ever read that book?
No, but I can see why that would be a good pick. Yeah.
Oh, it's a gorgeous book, and it's just beautiful. And I reread The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which was
love it.
Something that I thought about as I was writing the Guineveres. Particularly, what I loved about that book is how it's set in the present moment, but it just kind of flashes forward in time just briefly, and then comes back to the present of the story. And I really kind of admired how she was able to kind of show us in glimpses into the future and then come back.
Which is really good. That is not so easy to do well, and that's the thing when you're reading, you can really appreciate when a writer is doing that so well, and it's a really good example of that, the glimpse into the future and keeping us in the present.
I also read a couple of books in galleys. One was Sarah Pinborough's Behind Her Eyes, which is out by Flatiron. I just did an event with Sarah, and she's hilarious. It's a psychological thriller. And the hashtag going around for the book is #WTF that ending.
I love that.
It's just like a total surprise ending.
I love that.
And the other is Laurie Frankel's This Is How It Always Is, which is beautiful, a beautiful book.
I have to read that. Amy did give that to me, and I haven't gotten to that yet, but it looks gorgeous. It's out in November or January?
Out in January, the end of January.
Okay, good. I'm not late then yet. But yeah, that one looks just wonderful, and I love Laurie Frankel's work. It is, and I just spoke at a conference with both Laurie and Sarah, and they were great. And it's interesting because all of our books are so different. Yeah.
But what is at the core is kind of universal. It's this idea of wanting to belong, to connect with people, to be accepted. Kind of the difficulties of finding our place in this world, and whether kind of just the process we go through to find acceptance of ourselves and others. And so even though they're totally different books, I can see why we were all doing an event together, because they seem to have kind of at the base a similar theme.
And I agree. Those are the things that really people can connect to universally. And
maybe that's just what all books are about, but
I don't know. I don't know if all books are. I don't know. But I think also one of the things that Flatiron does so well in curating their lists is having books that people connect to that are so different. That must have been a fabulous panel. I love that.
It was. I mean, I'm biased, but I thought that it was a good panel.
It sounds like it's fabulous. And panels are fun to do. Was somebody moderating it, or was it the three of you asking each other questions?
Well, Amy was.
Even better.
Was moderating it. It was more like a lunch, I guess. It wasn't a panel, in as much as we were not really interacting with one another as much as we were just kind of talking.
Well, now that I know Amy was part of it, even better. And you were having lunch, so it's just. I like that.
And there was food involved. So.
And there was, there was food involved. And now you also are the author of 90 Days to Your Novel. So that you had written several years ago, 6 years ago, whatever. So anything in that book, did you go back and think, that doesn't work, or I was exactly on, or which pieces of that book did you bring into your own?
That's a great question. I wrote that book, so I was doing some freelance work back in, I guess this was 2009 or so, and Writer's Digest, the publisher, came to me and said, we really like some of the work that you've done. Do you have an idea for any craft books? And I lied and said, yes, of course I have an idea. And
somebody asked you if you have an idea, you have an idea.
I was in grad school at the time, and I'm like,
sure.
I absolutely have an idea.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this book called 90 Days to Your Novel. It's essentially how to craft a book, from brainstorm to final draft in 90 days.
Wow.
The premise of that book is essentially you have to create some good writing habits. You should need to write every day, and that you really can get a draft of a book done in 90 days. And I, have a lot of kind of brainstorming activities. And I probably in that book have too many activities prior to initially drafting the work. But when I was writing the Guineveres, I was really set on writing my first draft in 90 days, mostly because whenever I did a book event about 90 days to your novel, people would inevitably ask me, have you written a novel in 90 days?
That would be the question, of course. Yes.
I would always squirm. And, of course, I was teaching college writing and teaching creative writing classes. And so I felt as though I knew how to write a novel, but I hadn't actually done it myself. So when I set about writing the first draft of the Guineveres, I did it in 90 days. I followed my own advice.
Awesome.
I created an outline, and I wrote from my outline. But I think everybody's writing process is so vastly different that what works for me may not work for someone else.
Yeah, but it may work to pair this book with the Guineveres, because if you followed your own good advice and out pops the Guineveres, like slam dunk, move over Bruce, put 90 Days to Your Novel on the other side. And I'm on your brother's Instagram account, and he does have a lovely photograph of the Guineveres. But you guys got to do more. This is an amazing Instagram.
I know.
Purpose of envy.
On my list. I know he's got a great eye. He's a great photographer himself. So
wow, I'm enjoying this. Oh yeah, and there's another picture of the Guineveres. Okay, good brother, great brother. I like that. You should go on Instagram and check it out. He's done. Maybe you haven't seen it. I'm on the phone with debut novelist Sarah Domet and her brand new novel and debut, The Guineveres, will jump off the shelf into your hands, off the bookshelf or off the library shelf, whether you read it on Kindle or ebook or however you read it. But you really actually should read this in hardcover the way it is and feel this beautiful cover. It's textured and just gorgeous. And visit Sarah's site at sarahdomet.com. I'm looking forward to hearing what your readers say and following you on Facebook and Twitter and
thank you
getting
so much.
to meet you at some point. And congratulations on this beauty, on this gorgeous book. Loved it, and I mean, thank you. Thank you for this beautiful book.
Thank you so much. Hearing what readers have to say has really been the highlight of this whole process. I as I mentioned to you already, I think in our pre-taping conversation, is that you're writing in isolation and you don't always know kind of how you're going to connect with other people. But moreover, I didn't really know that much about the the publishing process, and so this has been such an enormous crash course for me in so many ways. And hearing your feedback and the feedback of other readers has really just been amazing, and totally worth all of those hours slaving away in private.
Well,
I
appreciate all of that, and I think what you've learned in publishing and what you're going to be seeing in the upcoming months, and the book is just out today, so I can't wait to hear, we'll keep in touch. I can't wait to hear what you hear from readers and what else you've learned through this process, but you've landed in such a wonderful house, Flatiron Books.
I have.
So
I'm incredibly lucky.
Soak it up and enjoy the ride. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And
I
thank
will.
you so
I
much.
will.